Who are some of the big winners from week one of the Miami Dolphins 2024 training camp? We're looking across the rosters for standout performers here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting. You can find our shows on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Tip of the cap to our everydayers, because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. It's Wednesday, July 31st. It's the mid-afternoon. The Dolphins did not have practice today, so it was a chance for us to kind of reset the landscape as it pertains to what the Dolphins have accomplished in the first week, recalibrate your expectations for the team moving forward. The team did have a roster transaction announced at 4 o'clock. They signed a wide receiver, Willie Snead, a longtime NFL slot wide receiver, has kind of gotten to the tail end stage of his career. It's not necessarily a player that I would expect would make the Dolphins 53-man roster, but you never know. Some of this is maybe workload management with the absence of Odell Beckham Jr. and then obviously Tyus Washington going on reserve, injured reserve, so presumably ending his season. So Miami down a couple bodies at wide receiver. Perhaps Willie Snead is a part of the load management there. And one of the team's young offensive or defensive linemen, Mario Kendricks, the undrafted rookie out of West Virginia, was the player who was cut in order to accommodate him, Willie Snead, on the Dolphins roster. So that's kind of the news this afternoon. But I think you can look back at the first week and get excited about a lot of developments for this football team. Now, not all of it is good. There's still some questions that linger. But if I were to just kind of work my way through the roster and shout out some players that I thought were winners for this football team in the first week, and I start with the skill group, the first name that I have to shout out amongst the skill players is River Craycraft. At the wide receiver position, there's questions about who's going to step up. Is Braxton Berrios going to get pushed by Malik Washington, the rookie? Is Eric Ezukama going to make a big-time emergence in year 3 after a promising flash in the preseason last year before a season-ending injury? Is Odell going to be everything that you dreamed that he would be? And right now, it's good old River Craycraft is the one who pops the most as far as running routes, good chemistry with Tua, reliable hands. He's not the most dynamic player, and that's the shortcoming with him. And at some point, you would assume the athletic ceiling of other players is going to supersede the familiarity and the instincts that River Craycraft has. But River is a player who came into camp as a bubble-type player. He's balling out. He has nice reps on a daily basis, and he's consistent with his hands, and he plays hard in the run game. I really admire what River Craycraft has put out there in the first week of training camp for the Dolphins. And maybe not be the most exciting name that I can invoke, and maybe I can help you with that. Devon Achane at running back looks to have every bit of the same speed that he did last season, in spite of what appears to be some kind of body transformation in order to stack a little bit of size onto his mass or mass onto his frame. But it's the multitude of ways in which Devon Achane is being used that stands out to me the most. And I can't get too far into the weeds because it's against the NFL's reporting, credentialed reporting policies. But what I would say is Achane appears to be primed for a more robust role in the Dolphins offense in all ways than what you saw last season. Johnny Smith, tough practice the other day as far as a couple of balls that shouldn't hit the ground that did hit the ground. One of those was on a kind of spot, quick timing release that it looked like he was or at least Tua expected him to kind of gear down in a soft space in between zone coverage, and he kind of kept running through it, and the ball as a result was a little bit behind him. But Jonnu Smith is the player, I think, at the tight end position who is living up to kind of the hope that there's a new dynamic to that room. And I think he's had a nice performance as a result. Jody Fortson, I know I had some buzz for earlier in the spring. He's been fine. He did have a big drop on a deep crossing route that was deeper downfield, 30-plus yards downfield, that I'm sure he would have liked to have had back. And in a crowded room where Durham Smythe and Jonnu Smith are kind of well-tenured players, and Julian Hill has all this promise as a super physical player, mistakes in this room cannot be had if you're going to make the team. I think I would be remiss to not shout out Jalen Waddle as having what I think is an elite training camp for the Dolphins. He has been delightful. He has won more than his fair share of reps going one-on-one against Jalen Ramsey and beating outside leverage with outbreaking routes and how he wins at the line of scrimmage. He's looking electric. And I think that's great news for the Dolphins as they hope to kind of have a more well-balanced offensive supporting cast. And certainly they've made the personnel moves to kind of place other players around you to do that. But Jalen Waddle being an even more developed player in what is year 4 for him would make this team that much more difficult to cover as well. At the quarterback position, I think both quarterbacks have been underwhelming behind Tua Tagovailoa. If I'm being completely honest, I think Skylar Thompson's probably had a better first week than what Mike White has. Mike's had a really tough last couple of days in particular. So I'm interested to see how those guys bounce back, because there's only presumably 2 spots on a 53, because you can elevate a guy off the practice squad every week to be the emergency third quarterback and not eat a 53 roster spot. So that is a development that I'll be watching closely as we go from here. And we're going to move to the trenches next. And of course, we gave the big guys some love yesterday, but there's notes on both sides of the ball to be had. We will dive into that here next on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. Stick with us. Going to the game is not supposed to be stressful, and that's why you should buy all of your tickets to all of your favorite events through Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster, and easier prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer you get to first pitch. They have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, meaning Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets for Major League Baseball. But not just Major League Baseball. They have tickets for concerts, comedy, sports, theater, and more. You can save up to 60% off with their flash deals and zone deals. And with all-in pricing, there's no surprises when you put the tickets into your carts and then go to check out. No surprise fees at the end of the rainbow. The Gametime guarantee means if you find cheaper tickets in the same row and section for less somewhere else, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today for last-minute tickets with the lowest prices, guaranteed. Along the offensive line, it's kind of been an incomplete evaluation. Teron Armstead just started practice yesterday on Tuesday. It was his first practice. He did some indies. He didn't do any team drills. I've thought the right tackle situation has probably been the most stable for the Dolphins between Austin Jackson and Kendall Lamb. Those guys have been pretty steady performers for the Dolphins. Isaiah Wynn is on the PUP. So right now it's Robert Jones and Liam Eichenberg and Jack Driscoll and Lester Cotton and Chasen Hines and Matthew Jones. And that group's had its fair share of ups and downs. I think Robert Jones has probably been the most steady day-to-day performer. And if you told me Robert Jones was your 5th starter, you'd say, okay, maybe ideally not, but it is what it is. And you'd move on. But with this iteration of the Dolphins offensive line, and with Isaiah Wynn not practicing, you're seeing both guard spots stressed a little bit. whether that's Jack Driscoll or Liam Eichenberg. Each one has had their own individual moments of, okay, there it is. The team has gotten some reps for Keon Smith at left guard as well. I think ultimately he's better served at tackle for you, however. So you're kind of waiting for somebody to separate themselves amongst the pack there. You would think Isaiah Wynn would be the player to do that, but Mike McDaniel's assessment of when Isaiah Wynn is going to be ready to go on Tuesday was not overly enthusiastic. Typically Mike says, well, we're not doing timelines, and you've asked me for a timeline, so we're going to continue to take this day by day. There's been no setbacks. Instead, his response for Isaiah Wynn was effectively, this was part of the understanding when we brought him back. There's just a matter of we're going, when we have a better idea of when he's ready to come back to work, we'll let you know. So it wasn't like an indictment, but at the same time, the coded language of it was different for Isaiah Wynn, and that caught my attention. I think Patrick Paul's actually looked pretty darn good too. Is the technique consistently where it needs to be? No. It's a work in progress. And Patrick said that when he spoke to the media last week, looking for little victories every day. They're there. You can find them. And I think that's a great development for a player who has all the physical tools to be an absolute stalwart in this system, but needs a lot more consistency on a down-by-down, snap-by-snap basis. There have been some guys that have tagged him for wins, but he's had a lot of quality wins of his own against guys like Chop Robinson, Quentin Bell. Now, Quentin Bell's tagged him back, right? We haven't seen Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, and you knew that as well. But man, oh man, you talk about the edge group, and the two names that I've already mentioned are probably the two most splashy names that we have in camp. Quentin Bell and Chop Robinson. And that's a great problem to have considering what the Dolphins' concerns were with the edge group. And I think the tackles have been playing relatively fine, and we haven't seen Teron Armstead. Chop Robinson, there was a clip that went viral from the Tuesday practice in which he was unlocked into the backfield. And it really illustrated just how explosive he is as his first step. And he was aided by the defensive structure to get a free run off the edge. Think of like Emmanuel Agba logging 9 sacks in the Flores scheme, but a guy that runs 0.2 of a second faster and is all that much more explosive. And that's kind of the vibes you're getting from Chop Robinson. And his run down stuff, his run defending stuff is to be determined. We'll see how that continues to grow as this team gives him different looks and you go through joint practices, and that's all to be determined. But I'll say this for Chop. The athletic profile has set a certain floor of expectation for me now. That's probably 6 to 8 sacks as a rotational guy at worst, if he's only going to be a rotational piece of the puzzle for the Dolphins. Like, I think that's the floor of expectation for performance based off of just how dynamic he is. That gives you a lot of margin for error as a player to still make plays. Quentin Bell's been one of the talks of camp. This is a great development for the Dolphins to have a player who listened all offseason about how there was this big void and opportunity in the edge group and came to camp ready to work. Now, I don't know how good he is as a pass rusher yet. I appreciated watching him test Patrick Paul with speed to power and create some pushback into the lap of the quarterback. You like seeing that a lot. Definitely more of a presence against the run than he was as a pass rusher in the first week, though. So you have all these guys that are flashing in one way or another, and the question is just, okay, how full of a skill set can you get out there come September? And if you can't, it's going to be on you guys to rotate the guys accordingly and put them in the best positions to make the plays that they're going to need to make within their respective roles based on personnel and down and distance. I have heaped ample praise at the linebacker room, so we'll talk about the back seven as a whole next, but not before I shout out one player on the defensive front. And it's Benito Jones. Benito was here before, went to Detroit, played a high volume of snaps. For what he is, which is an authentic nose tackle that's objective is to occupy space and not get easily moved. He does it. I can certainly tell you he does it. He is a whole lot of man there in the middle. And I think it certainly gives you a little bit more peace of mind knowing that the guy who's replacing Raekwon Davis anchors better than Raekwon Davis. And I think Benito Jones does. It's not a sexy role. I know that's not a super move the needle type of role, but it is a role that this team needs. And I think Benito Jones has shown he's capable of fulfilling that through the first week, provided he continues to show and showcase and perform at or near the level he has showcased and performed thus far in camp. We'll talk back 7 next here on Locked On Dolphins, top performers through the first week of Miami Dolphins training camp. That's coming your way next. Stick with us. So we all love sports. This makes this time a little tough when the sports stop sporting the way that we want them to, with no basketball or hockey playoffs, and baseball's kind of in the dead heat of summer, and we're waiting for football games to come back. But FanDuel lets the sports go whenever you want them to. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long, over on FanDuel. All you have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. This summer, FanDuel is hooking all customers up with a boost or bonus daily. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. In the back 7, shout out Jordan Poyer. Very impressive first week in camp for him. The ways that he stood out, the football instincts. He had a nice interception on Tuesday in which he jumped in front of a middle of the field pass from Tua Tagovailoa. Really good instincts, good ball skills. He's moving well. I think that was a concern for a lot of people, was how well is he going to continue to move as he continues his late stage career as an NFL safety. But it's not like he's just out here getting by with instincts and vision. There's actually some quick step, and they've been pretty deliberate. He's got a guy that's had a very deliberate work plan early on. And credit to Jordan Poyer. When he's been out there, he's looked fresh and crisp and performed well. I thought Kader Kohu had a nice day on Tuesday, very combative. He was a part of the scrap with Jalen Wright as the Dolphins kind of got feisty in the end of the first week of training camp. It's officially training camp. You get your first training camp fight. Kendall Fuller deserves praise here. Jalen Ramsey deserves a shout out here. Javon Holland. There's a lot of guys. Elijah Campbell, who wore the orange jersey. Ethan Bonner's a guy that everybody on this team who's a skill player or a secondary player, when they're asked about guys, everybody shouts out Ethan Bonner. I'm going to be honest. I don't have the observations that I need to feel comfortable with me feeling like I know where Ethan Bonner is at right now. So that's one of my objectives for tomorrow's practice. And we got 3 more days of practice before the end of this work week, right? And then they're off again on Sunday. I need to get a better feel for Ethan Bonner in those days of practice. So there will be more of an intentional eye on my part to kind of see, okay, where's the buzz? Where's the hypes? What's it all about? Right. The entire linebacker room, I think, has had high-level moments, specifically the top 3 guys in Long, Brooks, and Anthony Walker as well. So this back 7, there's a lot of love to be had for this group. What they're doing in zone coverage, how fast they are to flow, how aggressive they are, how quickly they're diagnosing things and driving on the football. All of it is exactly what you would hope to see from a newly installed defense that is going to be more aggressive than what the Dolphins played with last season. I think this is where the identity of this team defensively is going to be forged, in the back 7. And I could give flowers to Long, Walker, Brooks, Fuller, Poyer, Holland, Ramsey, Kohu, Campbell, Bonner. Now, to what degree? It's varying degrees apiece. Storm Ducks made a couple of nice plays in practice the last 2 days of practice as well. The performance has been hot, and this doesn't even get into Marcus May, and we're waiting for Cam Smith to come back from an injury, and it sounds like that's not going to be a long-term thing, thank goodness, because the Dolphins may need Cam Smith. And he was fine before he got injured. I don't think he was standing out in a great way, but he was not a liability out there in coverage. You want more and expect more from the first pick that you had in the 2023 NFL draft, for sure. But it's still early. But him falling behind and losing the reps now is not something that he can really afford if he's going to end up playing his best football this season. So that's kind of what's next for Cam Smith. So in all, I think from a stock watch perspective, I think the groups that have the biggest stock up, the position rooms, are the defensive backs and the linebackers. I would also say the edge group has some stock up as well. Mostly everything on the offensive side of the ball has been what we've expected. We're waiting for the emergence of guys at guard. The backup quarterback situation has not been good thus far, and we're kind of waiting to see what we get from Odell Beckham. He was out. We saw him on Tuesday. I won't say more than that because I'm not supposed to say more than that. But we saw him, and it was good to see him out during the team's practice because that was the first time that we did see Odell, or at least I saw Odell while the team was practicing out on the practice field. I won't say more. If there's no news between now and after tomorrow's practice, Thursday's practice, then I will talk to you all after Thursday's practice. If we get news between now and then, I will be there, and I hope you will too. You can hit subscribe and follow us, watch us, hear us, wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts or on YouTube. I am Kyle Krabs, your host here on Locked On Dolphins. Go Fins. I'll talk to you again soon. Talk to you later.